Welcome to the IVF Abroad podcast for people who are struggling with infertility and trying to conceive, and who are facing more obstacles than options when it comes to having fertility testing or treatment in their home countries. Alongside other experts, I will share, educate and empower you on your journey and help you to learn more about going abroad for advanced fertility testing and treatments like IVF and egg donation. I'm Emma Haslam, your host, now mum of one, and the go-to expert in fertility treatment abroad. Since the birth of our son in 2018, I have made it my mission to make fertility treatment more informed, transparent, accessible, supported and affordable for more people. And I help people just like you to become unstuck, to find a best fit clinic that truly meets their needs, and to have fertility treatment on their terms and timescales so they can achieve their dreams of growing their families. And I'm here now to help you too. Be sure to check out the free resources in the show notes for more help after listening to today's episode. Hello, it's Emma here. Welcome to this week's episode of the IVF Abroad podcast, which I have recorded especially for you, my friends, across the pond over in America. Because there are so many more Americans that I'm seeing now that are choosing to have fertility testing, treatment, things like IVF and egg donation in Europe, and who are saving thousands of dollars. And because of that, I wanted to come on and talk to you about what this might look like so that you can understand a little bit more about it if you are in this position. Because you will know, if you are living in America, that in the US, it can cost anything in the region of, let's say, $25,000 for a cycle of own-egg IVF in the UK. And you can be looking up to anything around the $50,000 mark for a cycle of egg donation. And what most people that I come across don't realise is that there are some fantastic clinics in mainland Europe that can offer these treatments for you at a fraction of the cost. And I'm talking 50% of the cost. So saving people tens of thousands of dollars and giving them often faster access, more choice of clinics to better suit their needs, and more options for things like egg donation. So in this episode, I want to talk about how Americans can access fertility treatment like IVF in Europe safely, efficiently, and cost effectively. Because I know that for us here in the UK, going abroad to mainland Europe for fertility treatment can feel very scary and overwhelming. But when you're considering going long haul, some people have never left their home countries, it can feel even bigger a deal and even more frightening to people when considering this to be a choice. Other people listening to this may not even know that this is an option for them. So I want to break it down for you so you can understand more and then work out if this is an option that could suit you. So why are people in the US choosing to have fertility treatment abroad? Obviously, at the moment, there's a lot going on in the States around women's health and fertility. And so I think that is one reason why people may be looking to have treatment elsewhere. But I believe the primary driving factor is those huge cost savings. Because you can't ignore, first of all, how expensive it is to have it in the US. And then secondly, how much cheaper it is to have it in Europe. So you can quite quickly see, can't you, that even including flights and accommodation, if you're saving 50% of the cost, then you are giving yourself more money in your budget to put into having additional fertility testing or treatment if needed to help increase your chances of growing your family, because your money will stretch further. And if you don't need to spend all of that money, then happy days, you have some money left at the end. So that's one massive massive plus that a lot of people just don't realise. The other thing to kind of consider is that in America, a lot of people I speak to, even with like private treatment, are experiencing very long waiting times to have their treatment. And in Europe, many clinics that are set up for international patients have little or no waiting lists for things like having treatment, consultations, including for things like donor eggs. So that's allowing people to start their journeys much sooner. And we know that this is something that is time-based, particularly if we're over the age of sort of 35, 38, and also being stuck in limbo waiting, particularly when you're paying for something privately, is an awful place to be when perhaps you don't need to stay stuck in that place because there are places out there that will be able to offer you shorter waiting times. If you are at a point where you're going to be having fertility treatment like egg donation, then by going abroad to mainland Europe, you've got access to lots of different countries in a relatively small area when you're considering the size of the US to mainland Europe. And therefore, you have more choice of countries. And within mainland Europe, they have, some really large, diverse egg and sperm donor pools and different legal frameworks as well. So you have the options of both anonymous donation in some countries and non-anonymous donation in other countries. And this means that there are less shortages for egg donors. And it means that if, for example, you're a person of colour, it's going to be much easier to, for example, match to your requirements, which contrasts with potential shortages and some of the more restrictive rules in some of the US states. Also, lots of the European clinics invest really heavily in state-of-the-art facilities and cutting-edge reproductive technologies so that they can remain competitive. And attracting international patients is big business for them. I know that there aren't really many people that fly, for example, into the US to have their fertility treatment. But people from all around the world are flying into mainland Europe. They're not coming here to the UK, but they're coming to mainland Europe because they are leading the way when it comes to assisted reproductive techniques. And so people are traveling from all over the world. I've worked with people in America, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, as well as people here in the UK and Ireland. So they're traveling that distance for a reason. When you look to the European countries as well, they often offer more inclusive legislation for fertility treatments as well, depending on the countries, but, more options for people who are single, same-sex couples, as well as more flexible limits perhaps around things like age for treatment, which might not be available in certain US states. And for some, being away from home for treatment can offer greater privacy and a chance to explore somewhere new, to distance oneself from daily routines and, work, social pressures associated with infertility, and to kind of be away in a more relaxed environment, which, is beneficial to us in terms of how we go through this process. But also in this day and age, particularly since COVID and the introduction of more flexible working and things like that, people often can travel and take work with them if that's something that they need or want to do as well. And, you can combine having treatment while also traveling and perhaps visiting a new culture or country, which can help to turn, the stress of having something like fertility treatment into a more positive overall experience. And I think they're kind of like the highlights, but I can understand that there are some common concerns as well about traveling so far for fertility treatment and thinking about, how long do you actually need to be away from home? And the answer is it depends. It depends on what kind of treatment you're having. But also, it's very common for people to do parts of this remotely at first. So, for example, having their consultations online with fertility clinics, looking at things like beginning their medication and monitoring through an OB-GYN in their home countries. These things can shorten the time needed away from home. Equally, if you don't want to go down the route of using an OB-GYN and getting your medication in your home country, you can do all of that abroad and stay longer. But, short stays are often enough, and you can discuss with the clinic how much time you've realistically got and look at what can be done in that time. And it works very, very well, with my clients in America who have either gone abroad and had everything done abroad, or they have started in the US and they've had their monitoring scans, got the medication sorted in the US, had the support of an OB-GYN, and then gone abroad for the actual procedure itself. So there are definitely options and ways around things. So don't let that put you off, because actually the time needed abroad is often shorter than you think. And it depends on the type of treatment that you're having. And the other thing to bear in mind as well is that many clinics operate in English too. This varies depending on the clinic. But as I said earlier, this is big business for lots of clinics. And if they're set up with an international team, English is often the language that they speak first and foremost. And so this does not need to be a barrier. And if you're with the right clinic for your needs, they will speak English to a standard that you can understand them enough, write English to a standard that you can understand them enough. And, you will always be in a situation where you are understood and understand, which is super important. And, when choosing the right country in Europe, there are some clinics and countries that are very highly regulated, with clinics that are registered, regulated, accredited, offering safety and quality treatments. And then in terms of that follow-up care, it can all be coordinated with your local OB-GYN or telemedicine. So it can integrate really well together, and the clinics in Europe can link in with medical teams in the US. And it's easy enough to find an OB-GYN if you haven't already got one to support you with treatment. But like I said, if you didn't want to go down that route, you can absolutely just do everything when you go abroad, but that just helps to cut down the time away. Yes, you're going to have a longer journey to get to where you're going. However, even with the cost of flights and accommodation, the cost savings are just so huge. And it gives you a chance to perhaps travel somewhere that you haven't been before, or maybe somewhere you'd like to go back to. There's some fantastic places in Europe, and Europe is so small, really, comparative to places like the States. You could turn this into a bigger trip if you wanted to and go and visit some other places. Once you're in Europe, it's a short hop and a jump on a plane to so many different countries. And so while it's a long journey for you, there's a time difference to consider. These things can be factored in, but the saving of money that you can make, plus the quality of care in the right clinic that you can get, is far outweighing the time difference and hours on a flight for lots of people. A lot of the clients I have supported with this tend to be on the East Coast of America, where actually the time difference is maybe only 6 hours, which actually isn't a huge time difference at all. So for them, when traveling, having done a similar sort of journey before, it's not hugely difficult in terms of jet lag, and it's not that long a flight either. Most of your contact with clinics is done by email. Your consultations will be with no commitment and are done online. So there's lots of things that can be done from wherever you are in the world. As I said earlier, I've worked with people in some really far-flung places, and a lot of this is done digitally. So it's really easy to be able to have these conversations and work out whether or not it's something that you would want to do. But I really wanted to bring this episode to you because I think a lot of Americans are so shocked when I speak to them about the cost savings and about how, with the right guidance and support at the right clinic and in the right country, this doesn't have to be difficult. And the feedback that I've had from people who've worked with me and have gone abroad are like, more Americans need to know about this. So here I am, letting you know. So how do you plan efficiently? Like, how do you make this less difficult? So first of all, you need to be thinking about what country or countries you are interested in and understand how things work in those countries. Can you have treatment there, the treatment that you want in your situation? And what are the laws and regulations like in that country? Consider what kind of clinic you might need for your medical needs, your care needs, your budget. Understanding any testing requirements that you might need and support you might need from an OB/GYN, or whether you would go abroad for everything. And consider how long you've got to go abroad. And think about having some remote consultations to get some costings and to get some options around how long it would be for you to have your treatment, if you required any support in the US, and getting some more opinions without that commitment. Because this is honestly so doable. And this is something that I can absolutely help you with. If you're interested in working with me, I can guide you through the process from start to finish and help you every step of the way so that you know exactly what you're doing and so that you've got that support and guidance from someone who's been there and from someone who's helped lots of Americans now to go abroad and grow their families. If you haven't yet watched my free training, then please do visit the show notes, because you can grab a copy there of my free training, which will tell you even more about going abroad for fertility treatment. And if you'd like to have a chat about what it looks like to work with me, then you can book a free 15-minute call with me. I'll drop the link in the show notes as well. And we can have a chat about the options, what that would look like, and to see if we're a good fit for each other. Until next week, my friends, I shall speak to you later. Bye. If you are facing more obstacles than options and want to learn more about how to overcome your fertility testing and treatment challenges in your home country so that you too can fast track to growing your family and on your terms, then check out my free training at yourivfabroad.co.uk/free masterclass. Don't forget to rate and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and so that I can reach and help more people. Thanks for listening.